Welcome to Spy Satellites, a podcast about Dune, Imperium, and the people who play it. I'm your host CJ, and this is Rotation 10, where we're discussing the second Dune Imperium Uprising Invitational, which took place in North Carolina January 6th and 7th. And we'll also, as a bonus, be talking about what to do when you get stuck in Uprising. So join us, why don't you, for a roundtable discussion focusing on cards, combos, atomics, and everything spice. If you like what we do, please give us a like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support us, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/hiddenassets. Supporting us helps us continue to produce quality content and gives you access to some pretty awesome perks, including voting for the upcoming podcast topic. So tell your friends and let us know how we're doing. We're always trying to improve the quality of our content, and we can't do it without you, the listener. So opening tonight with me is our tournament maestro and our sleepyhead here, Black Shadow, who has been up for several hours. How are you doing, Black Shadow?
We're not too bad. For the record, it's nearly 4 a.m. here, but I'm on a late sleep cycle, so it's not too bad. I do also want to just address some vicious rumors that are going about we're currently uploading our quarterfinal games on the channel, and that I may or may not have been swinging tons of grand visions into round 7s of combat. So I would like to confirm at this point that nothing of the sort has happened, but it has made for some fantastic content.
It's been very memey. I don't know how that happened, but yeah.
It's been I remember there was a time where those people would say, "Oh, Grand Vision's a terrible conflict. Get out of the game." I'd like to think that the quarterfinals has been a good candidate of why it should still exist. Great Joker. It's made for some great games.
Yep. Also with us is DS, who also goes by Sunny D, and he also participated in the North Carolina Invitational. And how are you doing today, Sunny D? DS, would you go by?
Yeah, either is fine. Typically in person, I go by Sunny D, but online, a lot of people know me by DS.
All right, sounds good.
Well.
Which one would you like me to address you as?
You can go by Sunny.
All right, Sunny. Awesome. Well, we're ready to go. So our first topic today, we're going to be talking about the second Dune Imperium Uprising Invitational. And we all went there. We all went there and hung out and played games and did a lot of stuff. So my inclination here is to just start out of the gate running my journey there. I showed up about midday, 5:00 ish on Thursday, the 4th, I think. Yep. And ended up playing a bunch of games with you guys, or the people who were there. I think I saw Shadow. You were already there.
Yes,
you'd been there for some time.
I'd got there the day early because I do not travel when I'm sleeping. I do not sleep when I travel. That shows it's 4 a.m. No, we'll be fine. But yeah, I'm absolutely. I just can't do it. I've tried multiple times. Unless I'm like sick or dying, I just can't do it. So I got the night before, stayed out of town, making sure I was nice and fresh. And it turns out that I was not the only person who did that. There was a few people that actually went to the hotel where the event was taking place, which I can't tell you where that is for obvious reasons. But yeah, a few people got there early because there's some people who take this event pretty darn seriously, as it turns out. But I mean, I guess you can't blame them. There's a fair amount of cash on the line, so. But yeah, I got there. So I got to the actual venue, like the following morning. So I was all nice and ready to actually meet with people, especially as the first time I got there late. It was about like 8:00 at night or something, and I was utterly exhausted. And I still had to sort out the competition structure with Dire Wolves, so I was absolutely out of it. Very glad I made the decision to go that night early.
Yeah, well, everyone was jamming games when I arrived. There were quite a few people still there. Not as many as the first Invitational. I would say like it was a little, I think a little weird because we knew everyone now. The first time we got to meet everyone, we got to go and, shake hands and kind of freak out about, getting together in person. And now the second time for me, it was just like, oh, hey guys, it was just like very casual, very chill, a little weird in that way. Like, we'd done this before and it felt a little bit, like, I don't know, comfortable and in a good way, weird in a good way, I guess. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we did obviously have a few folks that had not been to an event before. Obviously, we had like the invitees from Dire Wolf, such as like we obviously had Ryan and David from Man vs Meeple, which I will say absolutely fantastic to meet you guys. Really, really enjoyable. It was really good to meet them, and obviously some folks that weren't at the first event but had been invited to this one as well. So there's definitely some new faces, but it definitely a different feel to the first one a little bit because there was at least that degree of familiarity. Like we all knew to expect that Orski's like 11 foot tall, so it wasn't so much of a surprise this time, sort of thing.
Yeah. So, and DS, how was when did you show up? Oh,
I also
sorry,
showed
Sonny.
up on Thursday, and as Black Shadow mentioned, I was one of the people that joined for this event. I wasn't at the first one, but I had a great time, and so I got there on Thursday, and actually, the first game I played, I don't know if you remember, was against you, Black Shadow,
I believe
that
so, actually.
Thursday
Yes.
evening. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's the only game I played on Thursday, the arrival day, and then um, I was actually working on Friday, so I didn't I didn't join for additional games until Friday afternoon, evening.
Mm.
But it was fun. I think that day coming in really helped day in advance. Just like you mentioned, um, added to some rest before the Saturday event, so it was much
Oh
needed.
yeah, definitely. One thing I will definitely note as well while we're here is that it's not really a fair comparison, I guess. The things with the first event is that Uprising at that time was not publicly available. So obviously everyone wanted to get there like immediately and wanted to get hold of Uprising ASAP. It's basically as soon as Double put through the door, sort of thing, because obviously everyone wanted to get hold of stuff. It was all brand new, but now Uprising's been out for a little bit, so I did find it's not bad. It's not criticism by any stretch of imagination, but like this event, obviously it was about Dune Imperium playing obviously in a really big tournament, but there was more stuff going on outside of that. There was like Direwolf had like some prototypes of games that they're looking to release and developing still. Guys from Man vs Meeple bought some bits and pieces. CJ, you bought like Big Doom. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a
Yeah,
little
we'll talk
bit.
about that later. Yeah.
And lots of people bought sort of their own little bits and pieces. So it was nice to see in a way the room like before and afterwards that there was obviously Dune Imperium going on. There was also little other bits as well. Like I got a hold of what was it called? Scholars of the
Scholars of
South
the South
Tigris.
Tigris. Yeah.
Yeah, which was bought by David and really really enjoyed it. I've not played a game quite like that before, but I thought it was really cool stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I think that helps. I think it's nice that the event is obviously got its focus, but there's like these little outset bits going on. I think that probably appeals because not everyone wants to just play Dune Uprising solid for like 3 days straight. I know I definitely did the day before. Like I was kind of doing a bit of this, bit of that sort of thing, but it wasn't like everyone diving to have to learn the game immediately. We all came in with some knowledge and such.
Yeah. For me, like, I was a little bit actually not super excited about the second one because I hadn't been playing as much as I probably should have if I was going to go to a tournament like competitively.
Mm.
I was more interested in just hanging out with people and playing other things. But like, I mean, I like Dune generally. Generally, Dune is like one of my favorite IPs. And the IP. Let me put it this way: the IP hangs above Dune Imperium in a way. Like I like all the Dune content in a way, right? So like I will go play Dune Imperium, but I'll play other Dune content as well. And so I brought the big one, Big Dune, Gale Force 9 Dune, and we did get to play that a couple times. I'll get to that in a little while. But on the Thursday when I arrived, we all went out to like this amazing Indian place. Like we went out with Orsky, like Frank was there, and Ryan from Man vs. Meeple, like Morphling, Zach, Christian, Josh, Brotato, and then like there's one other person whose name I can't remember, but I apologize. But we all went out to this pretty amazing Indian place and just like hung out for a while. And then we came back and played some games. I think I played one game of Dune Imperium that night. And I wasn't going into it feeling super confident. Again, I my My experience with Dune Imperium and my like relationship with Uprising specifically has been a little bit rocky, I guess you could say. Like when I picked it up, I initially like loved everything about it, and then I had this like dip in my interest in it because I just felt like I couldn't figure out how the game worked the way
I
that
think it's fair.
Dune
I think we
Imperium
mentioned
was.
about that in the review, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bit of trouble with it. And I gotta say, like, I've gotten out of that hump. For one, which is very important for me because as someone who produces Dune Imperium content, I want to be able to play the game well enough so people can watch it and stuff like that. But, for the longest time, I just didn't feel like I understood how certain leaders worked or what you're supposed to do to actually win besides just like jam combats. And I've gotten past that. We'll get to that a little bit later, but it sort of relates to the tournament because my tournament did not go very well. I just want to point that like I did very, very poorly. And after my second game, I was like fully tilted because I like threw a game, like because I was just totally stupid and like ditched an intrigue that would have won me the game. I was so frustrated with myself that I basically like zoned out for the last two games. But it's one of those things where you go, well, let's just move on. But again, I didn't come into it expecting to do particularly well, and I was not in a great place with it at the time. So, but that's just me, and I've gotten past that. I think that, however, you both did very well, right? I think Shadow, you made day 2, which is great.
Yeah, we did. I was gonna let DS go first, actually.
Oh, DS.
I'll talk about we had
Yeah,
the DS go first.
So I also did make day 2, and I was knocked out in the top cut by the eventual champion Badger and also Cheesable, who ended in 4th place. But yeah, for me, like even you mentioned CJ, it took me a while to understand how to win in Uprising. I would say first 15 to 20 games, my win rate was very, very low. And I was also trying to figure out why that was. And what I came to think about is that I had to really unlearn the play style of IMO plus X plus base game before I could understand how to play out resource management in this version of the game. And this is something that I feel like coming from those expansions plus that base game, it definitely actually I feel put me maybe others behind to start with this. So when I've been teaching a lot of people how to play Dune recently, and a lot of them are completely new to the board game, both first version and Dune Imperium and Dune Uprising, and I just tell them to start with Uprising. And what I'm noticing is taking them less time to learn how to win than it did me in Uprising. Yeah, because they didn't have kind of like a set pattern that they were going into making moves with, whereas we do, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is basically what happened. Like you get stuck in a pattern with X and MO, and you know like what to do to win. You try to apply that to Uprising. It's just not going to work. Like the way that the way that game works, the way that X and MO is more open in paths to find points is the complete opposite in Uprising. And so you really have to take your points where you can get them. In Uprising, you don't have a lot of choice. You have either go for points now or try to save up for Spice Plus Flow or like race tracks, like hope into some extra end games. Like there's a lot fewer pathways to victory, but I think that there are more gameplay decisions that broaden the mid game, in my opinion. Like I think that's sort of what was tricky to me, is like figuring out what to do in that mid game where like, round 4, 5, 6 before you get to 7, 8, right? What do you do there? Yeah. What do you focus on? Like I was doing fine in the beginning. I was usually like doing great. And then like 4, 5, 6, I was like, thought I was doing okay. But then in the 6, 7, 8, I'd flop. because I hadn't set up right. I hadn't set up 4, 5, 6. And so like that was a big thing to really unlearn for me as well. And I think it is so so when I was going back and reading, I was listening to our review actually a couple days ago, and one of the things I said is that I would have somebody learn the base game Dune Imperium and then go to Uprising. I think I'd change that because just as you said, like it's much easier to go into Uprising with like zero understanding of the game and learn from the ground up versus having to tear down your knowledge and then rebuild it, because it is a very different system. Obviously some people are much quicker at that than I am. I just don't, I don't know. I don't get enough reps to really like do that generally, but it did take me a while after the tournament. 2 weeks I just didn't play Dune Imperium at all because I just needed to disconnect from it. And then I started playing again and I was doing much better. And I was like, okay, I feel like I've turned the corner. So, and it's interesting. I want to talk about that a little later. Don't want to get into it just yet. I want to still focus on like your path. So Sonny, when you got to Friday, how was Friday? What'd you guys do on Friday?
Friday was good. I think I played a game with Paul Denon early morning on Friday. Because like I said, I had to work during the day, but before going to work, I had gotten up around 6:30, and there was Paul, myself, and one other. We played a 3-player game, and that was my first time playing Uprising with 3 players. And I think even after that, I've only played 2 3-player Uprising games. But I
What
think
did you
even
think of
that,
that? What did you think of 3-player?
yeah, I was going to mention that I think even that helped me understand what are the right spaces to go to. So with 3 players versus 4 players, even in base MOX, there's a lot more board spaces open. So you have to make a little bit more decisions on out of what's available, right? Whereas in 4-player, usually one of the options that you were considering gets blocked, right? So then you just go with that the next best option, right?
Sure.
Whereas 3-player, you just analyze, you still have that option available, and for that, I think it really helped me weigh certain board spots in certain situations a little bit better going into the Saturday tournament. And I
That's
did lose to
interesting.
Paul, but
Well, Paul
it was a
No
Paul
really
was at
shame
the
good
there,
win.
final
truthfully.
table, so
No shame.
don't feel so bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it turns out
Yeah,
Paul
yeah,
Dennon's
I don't
he's
feel
pretty good
bad
at his
at
own
all.
game.
But yeah, it was great to have that one game, and then I think the later on in the day I played probably 2 more 4-player games,
Okay.
and I played a couple other games outside of Dune.
Yes, you did.
Yep.
Yeah, one of those games was Gale Force 9 Dune. We played it. Wait, we played that. Was that Sunday? You played the Sunday, or did you play in the first game?
No, I actually did not play, but I watched you guys play that.
You watched us play.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
there for half the first one.
Yeah, this is quite the story. So on Friday, I didn't play any Dune Imperium at all. I was just hanging out with people and played some other games I can't quite talk about because they're under embargo, or not
Yeah.
embargo, but NDA. But we did get to try out some things I think we can talk about. I don't know if we can really say some games that are coming up. Maybe I should just wait because I'm not 100% sure.
Pretty best for waiting, but
yeah, we should wait.
We got to sample some bits and pieces that are, as I said, either in development or like coming out reasonably soon.
Yeah, let's just say that we got to play a couple. We got to play one game that's
projects.
coming out fairly soon, and that was fun. And we got to play a game that was in development that was amazing, or I think that was amazing. I know that there were. Black Shadow had a little rough time playing it, but I think that, but I played it twice and I was enjoying. Well, we'll get to that when we are able to, but not at this podcast. So I played some of those. I hung out with like Ryan and David, and then we played a 7-player game of Gale Force 9 Dune, which was one of the best Dune experiences. And I played Dune a lot. I played it a lot. and it was one of the most enjoyable games I played. Let's just lay this out. So we had Moritani, which is a new house faction, which I had played before, or I'd had other people play before, but I haven't played the Moritani faction yet. But they basically put terror tokens on the board and keep people from going places. I was playing as the Bene Gesserit. We had an Atreides player, which was Black Shadow. We had Fremen. We had Emperor. We had, what else do we have? We had Chom, I think.
Yeah, Emperor.
And Harkonnen. Is that 7? I think I might have. Well, I think that's correct. In any case, so we're playing this game where we get to a point and Shadow is basically turned into a puddle. He's done.
I was exhausted that evening. I'd done like the jet lag had kicked in that evening. There's no doubt about that. Like I toughed it out. I got to like end of round 4 or something, and I was just like I was starting to fall asleep at the table. Not any offense to Dune. It was fun. It was a good experience, but I just couldn't finish the game. And knowing that I had this competition coming up the following day, and I want to have a really good crack, I was like, I gotta get some rest while I can.
Yeah, it was probably for the best anyway, because you did very well.
We played pretty well, and in the end, we'll talk about that in a moment.
But so what happened is Shadow asked to be subbed out, and so I found a sub for him, and that sub was who was it? Was it was
Is it like Dino or something like that?
Who? No, it wasn't Dino. Dino was playing.
No. Dino was already playing. Oh man.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of it? I can see his face. Any case. So we got our sub, and so he was playing
it was
Atreides.
Luna, wasn't it?
Oh, Luna, that's right. It
Luna,
was Luna.
It was Lunatic.
Yeah, Lunatic. And also Luna did very well in the tournament too. But he just subbed in. He had no idea what was going on. And I just said, I'll teach you how to play as you go. So we get halfway through round 5 or 4. I think it was round 4, because I think you ended up subbing out round 3 actually. So he is halfway through round 4, and then the Harkonnens drop 1 troop in Arakeen, where he has like 12 or 14 troops. He's got his big, massive troop.
Yeah, I know. I left a big garrison there.
There's a big garrison there, and usually that's fine, except for when combat came around, he revealed Lasgun Shield, and the entire group of forces were annihilated at once. So everything was annihilated, and he's just like, I think I'm not going to be doing anything for the rest of the game. Like he was literally out of the game. He would take 3, maybe 4 rounds to claw back into the game if he tried really hard. For an experienced player, let me just put that, an experienced player would have trouble coming back from that. And that's Dune. I mean, that you can get completely eradicated if you're not careful. Combat's very treacherous. It's dangerous.
So I pulled out at the right time, basically.
Yes, you did. Yeah. So he oh God, I felt so bad for him, because he's just sitting there, like he's just like doing the auction. He's managing the auction, but we're just like, dude, it's okay. Do you want to just leave? And he's like, yeah. So we just like erased the Atreides from the board. They weren't even on the board. There were no Atreides on the board. They were all in the tanks, and we just basically put his stuff away quietly.
Yeah, and basically just played a 6-player game.
Yeah, and then we played a 6-player game. And actually it was fine. It was
dramatic as well, right?
Yeah, it was so dramatic. And everyone, I mean, it was awesome.
Dramatic. Like,
but it was like, yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying you erased the Atreides, right? So it's thematic with the movie.
Yeah, it was extremely thematic. I mean, the Harkonnen just came in and wiped them out in one fell swoop. I mean, isn't that what happens? I mean, that was one of the craziest, like, also coldest things I've ever seen a player do to a new player in Dune. Like, a new player who didn't even fully grok what he was doing. He just said, here's my 1 troop. Your guys are dead. I just said, dude, I think it was Dino actually who did it. I said, Dino, dude, I just brought him in to sub in. You just wiped his entire troops out. He's not going to be able to play now. Like, he was so upset. Like, Luna was so upset, and he's like, no, it's okay. Like, I'm really sorry, Luna. And like, yeah, so he took off, and so we played a 6-player game. And from then on, like the next round and a half, we basically had one of the most dramatic events in Dune that you can have. First of all, it was essentially a backstab. You can't really backstab somebody. You can't like, renege on a pledge or a promise in this game unless it's like several turns later and you can't, do it. You can't fulfill it.
Yeah.
But in this case, what happened was, so Josh was playing Chom. No, he was playing the Emperor. Excuse me. He was playing the Emperor. And that is Martel BYM who was there. And he had tons of money. And I was allied with Moritani at the time. And he had like dudes on Carthag. He'd put like, I knew he put a nuke on Carthag, one of his terror tokens.
Oh,
is a
the
nuclear
token. Yeah,
bomb.
I was sure it was that as well.
Yeah. And so he had a nuke on Carthag. And at somewhere along the lines, he'd left like 4 or 5 troops there. I think it was like 4 troops there. He'd gone out and tried to get spice. And he was also fighting the Emperor at some other place. And this was the end of round 4. That same round where we erased the Atreides from the board. So he's like, okay, he's fighting the Emperor. And Josh says, CJ, I've got a proposition for you. If you do not voice me in this combat, because I'm the Bene Gesserit, I get to use the voice in combat, which compels someone to use or not use a weapon or a defense or something like that. If you don't voice me, I will give you 10 spice. He just said, I'll give you 10 spice. Like, really?
Spice.
I had 2 spice at the time. So I'm like, wow, that's a lot. Let me think about this for a minute. And then he said, and we ally at the next Nexus. I'm like, really? I'm like staring right at my ally who's about to battle with the Emperor, and who is Yodam, by the way, who is there. And he's basically like, are you serious? You're gonna go with him? and I'm like, let me just think about this for a minute, guys. And so I said, after some deliberation and everyone was kind of like going, oh my God, I can't believe this. I decided, okay, I'll honor that deal. The next Nexus, I'll ally with you. But I didn't know that he was, whether when that was going to happen, whether there was another Nexus exactly. So I didn't help him in combat. So he's like, you could have like told me what cards he had. I'm like, I could have, but I don't know that what you're doing is you're going to help me. Like, we're going to ally, but maybe not. So he lost the combat anyway. The Emperor lost the combat. Pretty close combat. He probably could have won it easily. If he knew the cards. But so that didn't like matter that much, because he showed me that he had a thumper, which calls a worm. And so at the next spice blow, he called a worm. We allied. Okay. And then in that round, we decided to go for combat. So he had like 2 strongholds, and you need 4 strongholds to win as a team, or 3 as an individual person. Right. And so what happened was he had 2. No, he had 2. I had 1. Somehow one of my Bene Gesserit as advisors were hanging out in, I think it was like Siege Tabor, and they're just hanging out over there. And there's like 1 Fremen there. And the Fremen have they can get over there, but the Fremen were like everywhere else. I think they might have been exhausted. Like, they might not have had any other troops. Oh no, was it Moritani? It was either Fremen or Moritani. One of those 2 were there. In any case, at that turn, we decided to go for it. I flipped my advisor in that location to fighter. So there's just 2 troops there fighting, just my troop and this other troop, the enemy. And I had parked all of my troops. So the Bene Gesserit have this ability to like put advisors on the board, or instead they can just toss a troop on the polar sink. And I had amassed like 7 or 8 troops on the polar, no, 6, I think it was 6 troops on the polar sink. And in a previous turn, I had just walked them as my move action. I walked them to the Imperial Basin. Okay, so they slowly went to the Imperial Basin. So they're just sitting by Carthag. And with that money I had from the Emperor, I basically said, all right, I think I can win 2 combats here. I think I can take this over. We can do this. So I dropped 8 troops on Carthag, keeping in mind there's like 4 troops there and there's a nuclear bomb. Okay. The Moritani player, who was my ally, decided that he was going to blow the token up He destroyed all those troops, my 8 troops, his 4 troops. And then with those 6 troops that were sitting in the Imperial Basin, I just marched right in and took Carthage. So I just got a free spot, and it forced him to do it because he was going to either have to battle me with 8 troops against 4, or he was just going to have to let me walk in. So those were the 2 options he had. He decided to just blow it up because it's fun. And so we went around, we did all our combats, and in 2 of the combats, we had to win 2 combats. And one I was fighting, and one Josh, the Emperor, was fighting. And so the first one was the one-on-one troop on troop basically. And if you're the Bene Gesserit, one of your weaknesses is all of your leaders are all the same strength. They're all 5s. So my 1 troop plus 5 is a maximum of 6 strength. And if I wanted to hold that fortress, that stronghold, I had to dial 0. So I couldn't dial one of my troops. I had to have a maximum strength of 5. And so the opponent, I think it was Moritani. Now more I think about it, I think Moritani was there. He's like, okay, so I know what you've got. Maybe it wasn't Moritani. It was somebody else. Maybe it was maybe it was Dino. Maybe it was Dino. I'm not really sure who it was. I can't remember. But anyway, that the player dialed correctly. They dialed 5 and they put their leader in at 5, so they knew how much they could have. So they had a 5 strength, which means that if we tied in turn order, essentially the person who was the aggressor, which was them, would have won the tie. But I had a card that was like one of the treachery cards, gives me +2 strength, and then it like makes me lose 3 troops from my reserve. So basically, like, I'm sending in like reinforcements off the board in like as an immediate thing that happened, right? He's like, oh my god, I didn't know that existed. It's like, well, I've never actually used this card before, but it's pretty sweet. So that one ended up winning that combat. And then we went to the Emperor combat, which was by far one of the most exhilarating combats we've had for a while. So at least I've had for a while. The way this worked is Emperor had a ton of troops. He just like doom stacked into this location, and they had a lot of troops at that location too. So we had a couple of things going our way. However, the Harkonnen who he was fighting decided to use his Kurama ability. He had a Kurama in hand, and the Harkonnen Kurama ability is to take all of the treachery cards that a faction has, steal them all, and then give them back the same amount. So essentially you could take all their good cards and give them back garbage, which he did. He gave us back absolutely nothing that would help us in the combat. They were just like worthless cards and things that did nothing. I think there was like a harvester. I don't remember exactly. There's revival cards that did nothing. So we're sitting there with literally no way to impact the combat other than through the voice, and dialing high. That's it. So I just told him to dial high. And then when we voiced, he was like, we knew we gave him a bunch of projectiles. We gave him a projectile. We had like some shields, I think. And I said, oh, wait a minute, let me look through the discard pile, because the discard pile was just face up. We played it to face up. I'm not sure if you're actually supposed to do it that way. We've always played it face up, but as the game goes on, knowledge becomes more public. Anyway, I just looked through the discard pile and saw that there were quite a few poison weapons out there. Saw that there were quite a few poison defenses in there. I had a snooper, and I had a poison weapon. So I think I accounted for all the poison weapons and all of those defenses. And so I voiced, you can't use a projectile weapon. And Dino says, I think it was Dino. Yeah. He says, are you serious? He's like holding nothing but projectile weapons in his hand.
Wow.
He's like, are you serious? And so he can't use that. And I knew that he just had to dial high, but we could out dial him because we had more troops there. So we just ended up out dialing him, and he didn't have a poison weapon. So we just basically like kept him from doing anything in that combat. He couldn't attack us with anything meaningful. We won the combat. And then in the next combat where the final combat, I was fighting against Mortani. It didn't really matter. We kind of knew it was going to happen. The final combat we had to win. Similar thing happened. I think it was either this was the last combat or it was the previous combat. It all kind of washes together after a while, but there was a similar instance where like I had poison weapon, poison snooper, and I knew that he didn't have or I knew he had a poison weapon, but not. I don't know if he had a projectile. I don't think he did. So I just voiced he couldn't use a poison weapon. Like used my snooper to just in case he had, or sorry, he couldn't use a projectile. Used my poison snooper in case he used a poison weapon, and then just killed this guy. And basically, like that was it. We won the game. It was a lot of drama. A great last round. And ended up winning round 5 with the Emperor Alliance. That was basically a backstab on the Moritani. So that was a very, very fun game of Dune.
What time did you all actually go to bed?
I think it was like 1 a.m.
Not as late as I was expecting.
No, I actually stayed up a little longer.
When I was sat there as well and I was struggling, I was like, this could go on for quite a while.
Yeah, it did go on a while. And it you know what? It goes on longer with newer players. But once you played the game a couple times, and I generally end up playing with a bunch of new players because you got to bring people into the fold, teach them the game, right? And that makes the game go longer. So when people say it takes 7 hours, yes, it can do that if it's, you know, a bunch of new players playing and they don't know what's going on and they're trying to figure out the systems, especially we play advanced mode all the time. Then yes, it can be late. And it was a long game. But when it comes to like if you're experienced players, this you can jam out a game in like less than 3 hours, like almost like 7 rounds in less than 3 hours. You can go pretty fast through the game. And it's just with familiarity. You know, you don't have to like wrestle with anything. It's like, how does that work? Or you just kind of go, you know. So it does take a while, but it does smooth out the more you play it. So that was really fun.
Yeah, it was a good experience. I'm glad I sat down for it. You know, it's as I've mentioned a couple of times before, like my actual birth of board game experience is not particularly vast. That's why I'm trying to do other bits and pieces, and why I took the chances, like play other games, like it, you know, at the event, you know, like Scholars, Century Spice Road. I believe Badger brought that. I gave that a spin. That was quite a lot of fun. Played that a couple of times. You know, bits and pieces. So, you know, it's about like trying to widen one's knowledge, I guess, and just becoming more familiar with bits and pieces. And you know, I've played half a dozen Twilight Imperium games. I wouldn't quite say Dune's quite that, but it's not a million miles away from it.
I mean, it was the inspiration for a lot of it, really. But no, there's more going on in some ways because you have the council. You know, you're racing to points as opposed to area control. There is area control in TI, but that's not how you win.
Yeah. It helps,
you know,
but yeah.
It helps, but yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I like TI as well, but I don't know. For some reason, Dune just like feels more focused to me. I don't know why. I like bidding games too. Bidding games are like my jam. And so as Dune is basically 1/3 a bidding game, 1/3 a combat game, and 1/3 like a politics game, you know, that really speaks to me. But
I will say, if there is another event and if we happen to find ourselves there, we have got to get Ra over there. And I keep saying it's like every single podcast I ever do.
Yeah, no, it's a great game.
It's really fun. I enjoyed it. It's great.
Oh yeah. It's one of those games you play it once, you're like, oh. And by the way, Ra is what Paul Denon said his favorite game.
Really?
Yeah, he said it was his favorite game.
Wow, I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, he plays it all the time. He said,
"Man, he likes Ra, and he's an Irulan main. I mean, at this point, I might as well just like get a ring from it. At this point, just get on my knee and call it a day."
Yeah, that's kind of cool. Sonny, you played in the second Dune game we played on Sunday.
No, I still didn't play in that one, but I was watching.
Oh, you didn't? You're watching?
Yeah,
I thought you played in it.
Yeah, no, I was in the top cut, right, on Sundays.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
you all started during that.
Yeah, you started a game before the first round finished, I seem to recall.
You good tournament players ended up having fun doing that while we had this other fun on the side.
I mean, as long as everyone sort of got what they wanted out of it. I mean, like, to be fair, like, as far as myself, I wasn't entirely expecting to to make this. I haven't even talked about like my trek through the event. As I'll quickly do it while we're here. But yeah, no,
Yeah, go for it.
it's kind of funky for me as well because for the first event, and not everyone, like I mentioned about it whenever it comes up, but not everyone realized that in the first event, I didn't actually even play in it. As I mentioned touch a moment ago, in the first event, I came to the agreement that I was actually going to help run the competition alongside Dire Wolf, specifically along Justin from the team, who I think he's done a pretty good job over both the events. He did have like a couple of very tricky calls that came up over the course of this one, which that's the way it goes sometimes. But yeah, the first event I didn't even play it. We went off, we did a lot of the structure, and did all that sort of stuff. But so yeah, it was kind of interesting playing this one, coming to it knowing to actually play in the physical event itself. And I'm glad that like when I got to it on the Saturday, like I played really well. I think I played pretty solid. 2 out of the 4 matches I played. There was only one match I felt like I played kind of a bit not so great. That was the game against Orski. Looking back, there was a couple of mistakes I made early, which like made his life really easy. Where I just should have like clamped down upon. And the only other game I didn't win, it was one of those ones where like 2 people just got worms super early, got battle intrigues, and all the worm conflicts came out. And it's like, well, what do you do? Sometimes that's just kind of a bit of a shrug. But no, the 2 other games I played, I won both of them as Gurney. Funniest story. I don't know which one's funnier in a way. The first one was I think it was the second round. I was in position to win it round 7, and then my round 7 draw was double Dune, double no, it was double Spice Must Flow, double Convincing Argument, Recon was my draw round 7.
Hope you get
It
Arcane, I guess.
and I went Arakeen, pulled Doom Desert Planet, and then I had nowhere to go.
Oh my god.
So that was my round 7. But I did end up winning it round 8. It was a crazy game as well. Stilgar got me 3 Spice Must Flows pretty much single handedly. Paired that along with was it Southern Elders or something, or was Charney or something crazy? But like I had like just a crazy like Fremen deck going, playing as Gurnia, Stilgar, and a couple of bits and pieces. And it was basically like as long as I pulled all my Fremen cards, I had get Spices for. I had a deck of like 9 or 10 cards, something like that. So it was pretty wild. But yeah, round 7 pulled like the worst physical hand. I think it was the only Doom card I had left. Like I'd trashed a lot of stuff as well. Absolutely wild. But then the round 4 game came, which I've mentioned about a little bit. It was a pretty brutal, basically do or die game between myself, Frank, Holy Boss, and oh, goodness me, LSR. That was it. We were all kind of lingering around sort of 9 or 8 points after 3 games. We weren't sure where the cutoff was going to be, but it was going to be probably either 11 or 12. So for me, I knew like if I win it, I'm through. If I get second place, I'm probably also through as well. But like there were several people there that like weren't in that stage with 8 points. It was basically a must win. One of the hardest games I've ever played, but also one of the best games doing Imperium I've ever played in my life. I do find it funny how 2 of the better games I've ever played of this game happen to be both in North Carolina, and both times it was against Frank and Holy Boss.
That's weird.
It's just bizarre, but both times, and when I played a Zerolon in the first event, that was just like I think it was a game on the Sunday or something. But yeah, like on that comp, that was super hard, gritty match play. I felt so bad for Frank as well. Like he played so well that game. He tried his absolute damnedest, got scored 11 points, and came third on like a spice tiebreak. It was just absolutely
Yeah, he
wild.
told me about that game.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I've got a picture of it I saved after. It was just so ridiculous a match. And it was like as well like I found I was a little fortunate, admittedly, in the last round, but I was in a position where I could like chance my arm a little bit. I had like a spy on shipping, and I was intending to go to shipping to get hold of my last friendship. But I had a spare move to do beforehand. And so I went to Assembly Hall to just persuasion, which I needed to get for a Spice Must Flow. I think I was trying to go for that. It was like a half a chance I could get it. And I pull intrigue, and I pull by access. which meant that I could then go
Wow.
to shipping. Shipping paid for by access, and by access meant I could steal Holy Boss's spacing alliance, and there was absolutely nothing you could do about it.
That's so
Uh,
crazy.
it was absolutely heinous. That knocked him out on the spot. He was just absolutely dead in the water. And then yeah, we all finished like on 11 points basically. I had won the game on Spice tiebreak. I got a second
Jeez.
place out of the conflict. Pulled an intrigue, and that matched my last combat tie as well. So I finished on 12. But I'd already won the game
Wow.
at that point. But it was a pretty insane. So yeah, like yeah, and that knocked Frank out. Of course, he was a finalist in the first event. And yeah, like he played so like he just refused to die playing as Marty. He just kept going and going, wouldn't give up. And it was really brutal because he came, I think he finished like 18th or something out, so just outside the cut. If he just finishes second in that situation, he gets there. But LSR had 11 points as well, so it was absolutely wild game. Most memorable Uprising game I've ever played. And it was just a crazy way to finish. And I ended up finishing, I think it was 7th out of all 36, which was some effort. And it was kind of on a personal front. Like, yeah, it was obviously very satisfying to play pretty decently, and to have gotten some decent results in it as well. But I think it's also nice to kind of show that there are some people at these events that play a lot of Dune. Like on an average week, I might get the chance to do maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 games a week, and there are people at that event who can and do play that amount like a day. Some of
Yeah.
them maybe more so than that. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. So, and it's like it would be cool for me to be able to do more than that, but like I've got a channel to run, I've got hidden assets. I do obviously a lot of stuff on this channel as well, and there just is only so much time in the day for me to physically do stuff. So it kind of makes me wonder a little bit, like if I had the ability to play like 15, 20 games a week and really do it like where that would take me. But even like to be only playing like maybe half a dozen games a week, like I can show that I can still play with the best players in the world, and I can still compete, and I can still like really have at it. And I had like several people came up to me afterwards, like congratulating, saying, you played really well. Badger came up to me and said, yeah, a few people was like, Marty, you played really solid, and I was like, I'm not trying to like give myself an ego trip here, but it felt kind of like, especially having sat out the first one and not even played it, to come here targeting. All I want to do was make day 2. That was the target, and then to make it pretty darn well. We finished like in the top like 20% or something. Was like some damn going. Unfortunately, when Saturday came, I played like the worst game of Dune Imperium I played all week,
Oof. Yeah.
which is the way it goes. To be fair, I didn't even actually play it that badly. I played it at Shaddam, and for like the first 3.5 rounds, like I was playing really good. But then hands were drawing awkward, and I died on action economy. And in the end, it wasn't
Oh
even
yeah.
really close. That was against Paul and Sneaker Dead, who obviously both made finals.
Yeah.
And also Ryan Gosling from Man vs. Meeple, who had a
Ryan
really good run.
Gosling.
Yeah.
I think you mean Ryan Schoon.
Sorry, Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling
It's
was
like
also
nearly
there, by the way. Yes, Ryan
he was,
Gosling
yeah.
and Tay Tay were there.
Yeah, it's nearly 5 in the morning, kids. I'm sorry. We'll make sure to edit that one out, the
No, no,
podcast.
no. We're not editing it.
No, I'm sure that's staying, and I'm 100% of that. But in any event, no, it was he had a really good run as well. He learned a lot. We're speaking with him about bits. He spoke to loads of people about that, and he's obviously talked about his thoughts a little bit on the event. He did a video like the top 5 things he learned from the event as well and stuff like that. So yeah, it was super
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, the two of us ultimately we came into the massive underdogs in that game, and that's kind of the way it went down. I had nothing to lose, but yeah, make quarterfinals an event like this. I think was fantastic going. It would have been nice to have made it one more round, but I think at that point, yeah, I had nothing to lose. It's what happened. You chance your arm sometimes. I took a couple of risks early, and if they don't pay off, they don't pay off. That's the way it goes sometimes. So, but all in all, yeah, like I don't think I could have played much better that event really. It makes me think if there is another one, if I can get into it, maybe we can go further.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say, like, I was very happy for how well you did. I'm really pleased. I think it's exciting to see you do so well in the tournament, and yeah, I mean, just congrats on getting that far. It was great. Big ego boost. You deserve it, man. It was great.
I think it
Yeah,
was good as
yeah.
well. As well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, cheers. I think the one thing I'll quickly say is outside of CJ as well, like in the first event, the streamer pool did not do very well. Orski went out early, Cheeseman went out early. Everyone, all the main content creators went out early, but they both obviously Orski also made he made the quarters. He finished
Yep.
top of day one, which was pretty insane.
Yeah, he did very
Um,
well day one. Yeah.
he did one and then crashed out in the quarters, and obviously Cheeseman managed to grind his way over to the finals. Um, so yeah, it was pretty lively. The semi-finals were also very eventful. A lot happened in the semis.
Yep.
There was fun calls. There was dramatic last bits and pieces. It was a busy event, but I
There
think
was a
everyone.
weird thing. Were you you weren't at the table, but did you see there was a table that Jimmy was at
Yes, I'm aware of
that
the story. Gone.
this is a big drama that happened. So like they had miscounted points and thought the game was ending, and then they got to the end of the round and like revealed their final cards, like their end game cards, and then recounted and realized that he was short a point. And so they had to like go back and play the next round, but with everyone knowing what their end game cards were, and it was very awkward, and
Yeah.
everyone's really upset about that.
It wasn't just that as well. The other issue was, I think the problem was, so they assumed it was the last round. So I think Jimmy took out the wall because it was still up round 7,
Right.
to like get as many troops in, and then they recounted and realized,
Yeah,
oh
they would
wait a
have
second.
played the last round a little bit differently,
Yeah, yeah,
for
exactly.
Oh,
sure. And
entirely. Yeah.
And then obviously there would have been the round would have been up round 8, yeah, and completely warped it. This was a topic of conversation, understandably,
yeah,
after the finals
yeah,
were
the eventual
played.
winner of that game didn't change, but the second place did change, which is um, who moves on
Right.
as well, right? So
Yeah, exactly. That was the format. It was a bit different. Once you got the data, it was top 2 go through. I sympathise with Justin, who did have to make a call one way or the other there, because it's a situation where there is no good decision left anymore. You are left with, okay, we just let this guy have an extra point which he has not scored, and we end the game now, or you say, well, he can't have an extra point that's just been given to him roundly, and we have to carry on, because you can't go back to the beginning of round 7
Right.
because so much has happened. So it was one of those unenviable calls where whatever call he decides, like it's kind of ugly. I think he made ultimately the correct decision in saying we've just got to kind of play on as it is, because I do believe ultimately it is the table's responsibility to make sure that everyone's score is correct.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
way I
I
view it.
100% agree with you there. I mean,
Um, like
I think that it's I mean, it's unfortunate that that happened, but just goes to show that you have to pay attention to not only your own score but everyone else's score, and then
it's
simultaneously checking that, right?
the two issues you have is that obviously we play a lot online, and very fortunate with our online and the
Mhm.
mods is they're incredibly well scripted, is that this situation would almost never have come up, because everything is done,
Yeah,
it's tracked separately, it's scored like as part of scripting and stuff like that, so this stuff sort of thing doesn't really happen. And I guess when you take that into a physical environment, I mean, you think between both events, there has been probably about, like, I don't know how many games have been played, like probably about, including practice, like easy like 250, 300 games. It's the first time this has come up in any of those. And it's going to happen sometimes, but you cannot get into the business of letting someone have an extra victory point that they have just not scored. You
yep,
can't. I don't think there's any, like, you can make whatever argument in the world of, like, well, obviously the way it's gone down has really screwed someone, and it's all a lot of happens, and this is all completely true, and it all is valid until you look at the alternative and say, all right, well, we're just going to give this guy a victory point for nothing out of nowhere. You can't do that. It's not ethical, and that is just it's not feasible in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, it was a really unfortunate situation. And it was. I know there was some people that were not happy with obviously what happened, and I know that weren't particularly happy with the call made. But I really don't see what else you can do. It's so far down the line, and you don't even know exactly when the error happened. Like, you can't go back to the start of the round. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, everyone knows everyone's entries. Everyone knows what people are going to do. this is where you just got to be vigilant. And I think if you are playing, it's a reminder. I think for if you're playing in a competitive competition in person, especially in games that have multiple people at the table, that you have to be vigilant of this sort of thing all the damn time. I'm sure at the World Series of Board Games, I'm sure there has been things that have happened over the course of its lifespan that are not too dissimilar to this. And I'm sure that if we'd have had one of the judges from there at this event, they'd have ruled exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
because that's just the way it's gonna be. And obviously it was unfortunate, and it sucked that the quarterfinal went down like that, the semifinal, whatever it was. But there is no alternative. I don't, whatever you say. So
I
yeah,
think Justin made the right call too. I mean, you can't just give somebody a point because everyone thinks there's an extra point there. That just doesn't make sense, and it's clearly biasing towards a specific player. So, like, I think he did the right thing.
yeah. As I say, ultimately, the table has to be responsible for its own scoring. And what I suspect might happen as a response to this is, I suspect if there is no one of these events, that there will be something on the side where people will, like, if you score a point, will make a note of how did they score it, sort of thing. I
Hmm.
suspect that might happen maybe like on like pen and paper, say like spacing, friendship, conflict for spice cash in, matched ornithopter symbols. I have a feeling something will come down to that. And to be fair, I think if you're playing in competitions where there's like $20,000-$30,000 on the line, I don't actually think that's unreasonable.
No, I think it's fine. It actually reminds me of like when in chess how you mark moves.
Notations, yes.
No, yeah. So like that would actually be a pretty interesting, and I think everyone would appreciate that too. Like just a simple like checkbox like next to it, it's like a plus or a minus, like gain or lose point maybe, and then what you did. Like if you gain the spacing friendship, you write plus spacing friendship or spacing friend or something like that. If you lose it, minus, so it can chart what you have, and you can count your pluses and subtract the minuses. Easy, know how many points you have. So that'd be kind of a nice way to do it. Yeah, we can make that.
I was not involved in any of the organizational the rules on this time because I was obviously playing in the competition. But if they came to me, that's what I'd say. So yeah, like maybe once you get have like something so people can make notations. If you're it happened. I mean, obviously you can't have a judge looking at every single game, going in the room all the time and making sure points are correct. Like there's only so much you can do. Once you get to the finals, it's different. Justin can just watch the whole thing, and he does. He did it for the last one. He did it for this one. Just judges the entire game like overall. But there's only so much you can do when you've got like 9 tables, 10 tables being played at once. Like you know. That's just
Yeah,
the way it's got to be. So, but yeah, so it was a little bit of a shame that happened, but I think it's a learning experience for a lot of us.
agreed. Sonny, how did your tournament go? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, sure. So, um, I ended eighth after day one. So just behind Black Shadow, and then is knocked out in the top cut, as I mentioned, by Badger and Cheesable. But day one, I had one win, and the rest were second place. So that was pretty solid. The first game I played against Sneaker Dead and Federico and Christian, and I thought I was going to win that game. I got off to a very early lead, and at one point I think I was 3 ahead of the next placing player, and I had cards like Overthrow, a very strong card. So I was moving ahead on the faction tracks. But I made one blunder, and that was a very humbling learning decision. And that made the game not end on round 7, and instead not even end on round 8, but go to time and be decided uh, just before it would have gone to round 9. So in round 7, I was on the Bene track, and I think I went to either Espionage or Secrets, recalled a spy to draw a card, and in doing so, I opened up that spy location, and Federico happened to have double access. So I guess I went to Secrets, pulled the spy, and then he went to espionage, put a spy down on the Bene track, and then infiltrated the secret spot and overtook that faction alliance, which bumped me down a point, and I was at 9 at the end of round 7. So that stopped me from ending it. And
Damn.
the odd thing was, thinking about it, there was no reason to pull the spy because I already had Spiceless Flow. I was just trying to cycle my deck and draw into a card for my next action, but it wouldn't have netted me. That next action didn't net me a point or anything like that. So it was a big blunder. So I ended up second in that to Sneaker. But had I ended at round 7, Sneaker actually would not even been second in that game. It would have been third. So it was kind of impactful. So after
Oh.
that, lesson learned. But then I was able to again get second in the next game to Morphling. I believe the next game I was playing against Morphling, Frank, and one other. I think was Sean Hendricks. So I ended up getting second in that game. Morphling played Staban in that game with very good access in the row, starting row, and was able to build a strong synergistic deck, and then also made one particular play. So you can't recall the whole sequence, but it surprised us all, and he was able to get one of those 5-point last rounds. So he went from last place on the track, the victory point track, to the first place in just one round.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was feeling okay after being second in 2 games, because points wise, standings wise, that's still doing decent. And then the third game, I ended up winning, playing against Dino. No, not Dino. Playing against Che Airman and John Hendricks again, and one other person who can't remember, but that one that was decided on the round 8 round 8 combat conflict 3 card that gives you 2 bumps, but if you have sandworms, then you get 4 bumps, 2 each on 2 different tracks, right? And
Propaganda.
that ended up swinging 2 alliances for
Wow.
me at the end, and then I got a
Nice.
victory off of that. Yeah. So then after that, I was, I guess, second, first, and by calculations, the last match actually didn't even matter at that point for me, because I think I would have made it to top cut
Yeah, you
either way.
did. Yep.
Yeah. But that
Yep.
final game, I also got second again.
Nice.
Yeah. So that last game, I think playing against Feasible, Sneaker Dead, um, who were the uh, yeah, Cheesable, Sneaker Dead, and one other. Um, and I played Staban in that game. I had some a very early lead, and some very good access cards with Staban. Public Spectacle ×2. So that's one of the cards that I'm very surprised that there's 2 copies of
Yeah, I
in
know.
the Imperium deck. And in very few games does the same person have 2 copies, but I actually had 2 copies of it in that game, and it very much snowballed with the faction track because of that. And I also had a couple other good cards like Captured Mentat, which helped on reveal switch friendships and replay alliance awards, those kind of things. Strong finish overall, but Cheesable won that game, and he played really, really well. So well, in fact, that it was around 6 victory through a player like me who had a very strong Staban deck, right?
Round 6, you said?
Yeah, he had a round 6 victory, and that was actually the first, to that point, that was the first round 6 victory game that I had been in,
Hmm.
online or in person. So I was surprised, but I guess the way that he was playing Shaddam in that game, and the way that that game panned out, um, was that I had we had both gone for opposite alliances, and he had two alliances, I had two alliances, and we both had all friendships. I believe he had a match in the two combats that he had. He had won one combat, got a match, and then I think he had a match via intrigue card at the end. So he had actually ended round 6 on more than 10 points, which was very surprising.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think opportunism was in there too, if I recall. So yeah, there's a couple intrigues that are just they can expedite your wins if you do see them and you do play to them.
Yeah, couple nutty cards came out. Wow, I mean that happens. That sometimes does happen. I think it happens less frequently than it did in XMO though. Getting a round 6 victory, wouldn't you say? Like it's still kind
100%.
of
Yeah. So round 6 victories were uncommon, but not super uncommon in MOX. In this game, even in the tournament, we saw a few of them, but I wonder if that was due to the format that rewarded second place somewhat heavily, right? So
sure.
there were games that I played in. I don't know if you all experienced this as well, but once someone got an early lead, a lot of the times, 2 through 4 in the placing were stepping on each other's toes to get second place, right? And in doing so, that sometimes helps boost or expedite the victory for the first player, right?
Mhm.
So I thought it was more common than you would ordinarily see in this tournament setting.
Interesting.
But yeah,
As the tourney guy, I suppose I'm
yeah,
probably obliged to step in here quickly. So
yeah,
from my playing of from this event, I actually didn't see too much of that in like the 4 games that I played. I mean, the third game was like basically we were all largely do or die. I think
yeah,
I could get away for second place. I think that was pretty much the case. So maybe it's a small sample size. I think what was I can definitely say I'm sure that once we got to like the quarters and it was top 2 go through, like I know for a fact like in round 7, like basically Sneaker and Paul were basically just an open conversation of how do we make sure us two are our top 2. You know, because
yeah,
that's the format.
yeah,
I mean, I've never been a big fan of doing top 2 goes through. There's a reason, not to knock it, obviously from like the artificial tournament, the first like proper Rise of X one, and then I took over the reins from Zion. I decided to do away with that, and we obviously then that came into like the group stage, which is obviously what we go with now. Obviously the 5-3-2-1 is largely come over from that, and I think on the whole, like the thing is, it's like it's part of playing in a group. When you play in a group format, you are going to play games a little bit differently to if you're playing in a league or if you're playing a knockout game. That's just a part of being part of a tournament structure, and the structure that you are a part of will change your how you play the game a little bit. That's the nature of it. It's like
for sure.
if you're playing like I used to play I played pool for a while. I represented Buckinghamshire County here in England. If you play in a team game, you're playing basically single frame shootouts, and it's a very much different experience. So even if it's like a best of 11 frame sort of frame, team versus team, you might play 2 frames at most, maybe not even that. In a county match, it's 36 frames, and like you might get 4 frames max, sort of thing. It's a very different format to like if I'm playing best of 11, but it's like just in a league, it's 1v1. Because you're playing repeated frames, it's a different feel. Like you're able to play a bit more freer, sort of thing. You can kind of go with it. So I can understand why some people would think that and feel that, but that's just part of being in a group points based tournament structure, and that is just the nature of it. And obviously this has come up occasionally in obviously the comps that I run, and is something that is there are tweaks planned for the Uprising comp, which is coming very soon. If like by the time this has been uploaded, it may have already been announced. Who knows? At this time of recording, it's not too far away. I've just got to set out some last details on it. In any event, yeah, it's going to be different if you're playing like in the rank system, where it is basically you win, you get points, you lose, you don't get points. This isn't a ranked ELO structure. This is a tournament that's got to be done in 2 days, sort of thing. So that's just the nature of the format.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
if you,
definitely. That dynamic can be expected.
yeah,
But yeah,
and
I
it's
guess back to round 6 victories in general,
yeah,
it's
you've got
super
the point.
super uncommon in
Yeah.
Uprising. Maybe it's probably like less than 10%.
I would
Less
say it,
than maybe 5%.
I would
Maybe one
I
out
would
of every 20 games. I
So
see that.
I
Sounds
would
about right.
say in my experience, it tends to happen either if A, someone gets a crazy run of cards, or B, if there's like a big skill / experience discrepancy.
Yes. Yeah.
I think in a competition like the North Carolina Invitational, you're very rarely going to see it because everyone is pretty well experienced with the game, and so the only way someone's really going to get around 6 wins is they just happen to hit everything, and it just runs completely their way. Otherwise, it's just so hard to make round 6 because people are aware of that.
So,
Yeah.
so going forward in this tournament structure, what do you think? What are we going to change, or do you want to save that for another announcement?
I mean, what the North Carolina event?
Yeah, for like, say we did another North Carolina event, what would you change?
I mean, it's a tricky one. Obviously, like if I'm playing in it, I'm not really involved in that sort of side. I think things that were notable is that we did a plain reverse draft. We removed 2 leaders, but everything was there was not hidden picks, which I think
I think it was
was
good, actually. I
well,
think it was good.
I think it was largely based because they couldn't figure out a solution of what to do about Lady Jessica being double sided.
Yeah, yeah, it was that. Other than thinking
Uh,
about passing
that's
Jessica or
that's
all the
that's
cards under the table, that's
That's largely what I did actually quietly suggest. I said, well, you could use the Rivals deck. That's got basically all the leaders, I think, bar
That's actually a
like
really good idea. That's a
oh
great
yeah,
idea,
yeah.
Shadow.
Yeah, you
I
can use the cards, right? Yeah,
yeah,
that makes sense.
I think there's one
Mhm.
leader who is not featured. I think it might be Shaddam. I think is
Oh,
the only
okay.
person that's not a part of that deck. But you could sub that like in the first competition, we subbed Jessica for Helena until
Mhm.
some people started realizing as the event went though that the backing color was actually different. So we obviously
Slightly
couldn't
different.
do that again. The only
Yeah.
issue with doing that is by using the rival cards, you're basically I mean. You don't have to like you can still have all the leaders out front and people can look at whatever they want, I guess, but that was my quiet suggestion. It was not taken up by the looks of it. So, but that's largely why it happened. I think it
Yeah.
was
I
fine.
mean,
I
I
do
think there are
think,
arguments for and against hidden picks, and I mean, since the tournament, I've been playing a lot of games on TTS, right? Of both hidden picks and open, and I haven't yet come to a consensus myself, or even discussing with others on what is better yet. Because open, you get to kind of counter pick
Yeah.
what you've seen people pick in fourth and third position, right? If you're in second or first, and that often changes the dynamic of games in Uprising, even more so than it did in MOX, in my opinion.
Yeah, well,
I
because
mean,
you have a couple leaders who specialize in combat. And if you have
Mhm.
like 2 leaders in the game who specialize in combat, well, things are going to be a lot more evenly
Yeah.
distributed between points and combat victories. And you have a better chance of like thwarting someone. But if there's one guy who is just the combat person, you see like Shaddam, you see Staban, and you see Jessica, and somebody picks like Gurney, and you're like, you're gonna run away with the game. I mean, you gotta be able to like openly prepare for that. I think that's
Yeah,
actually a
yeah, and then
pretty
if you
good.
see 3 combat leaders and there's a leader like Shaddam, oftentimes Shaddam has easy path while the
Yes,
combat leaders are fighting over combat.
100%. So yeah, I think that actually changes the dynamic I think in a positive way and makes each leader pick a little bit more interesting. Honestly, for me, the open picks. I
it's
Yeah,
think
my
hidden
tricky
picks were
though.
cool too, but
Go.
I think as sorry, I don't mean to keep
go for
droning
it.
on,
Yeah.
but for Ix and Immo, the reason we had hidden picks is so you had to like guess whether Leto or Elban were in the game, so you didn't get like your own game plan walked over. So you didn't have someone else going over the same thing. Like that seemed pretty fair because, like, generally speaking, those are pretty strong leaders. Like if you get Leto in there, he can really hamper Ilban if he's ahead of him in turn order. So like those things were interesting, and it also made it a little bit risky to pick Ilban until everyone just realized that Ilban was just the best character. But like before that, it was an interesting choice. Now I think we kind of have that now, but it has to be open because it's almost like you're threatening to do something, knowing what's there, you know. So it's that's kind of a cool, I don't know, it's a cool dynamic for me. It's a neat metagame.
Two sides of the same coin. Yeah, Hidden Picks was brought into XMO mainly, I think, because Forth was constantly getting counterpicked to Oblivion. Hence why, you know, you think to like there was a time where I think we had a period of time where Helena was getting chosen in Forth position like more than 50% of the time.
Yeah,
which
that was
is
lame.
Yeah, especially when it was just base game, right? Helena was very, very strong.
Well, I mean, just even in Base and X, you know, in going back to I think in the Imperium Cup, I believe we did the stats. I think it was like 57% or something at the time. Helena was getting picked in fourth position, which is not healthy. Which is why Hidden Picks came in with GPIs, which helped obviously give a lot of protection to that, and we got to the spot where it was actually reasonably kind of about balance. But the other thing as well is you've got to bear in mind with XMO is that you're removing like 6, 7, now it's removing 8 leaders. So it's very hard to know sometimes what has been picked ahead of you, whereas in Uprising, you've only got 9, and you're only removing 2 leaders. So like position 3 and whoever picks next can probably make some rough guesses on who you've removed because there's just not as many options. Like if you're sitting in the third seat, for example, you're given 6 leaders. Well, you know it's one of the 3 you've picked, and looking at the row, you can probably say, all right, well they've probably gone for this. And a lot of the time, you're probably going to be right. So it's a little bit different criteria. But it's I don't know. Your mileage is going to vary. I think Hidden Picks definitely did its purpose and did what it needed to do with XMO. Whether it's required for Uprising, I suppose, is another question because we did do. Well, I mean, the first event was Hidden Pigs. It was Hidden Pigs the first event, and then the second one it wasn't.
Yeah.
So it's. I think it kind of depends probably on a lot of personal preference. I think at the end of the day, and I'll have to make a call what I do for the Uprising comp. That's something I hadn't actually thought about, truthfully. So I'll have to mull about that over the next couple of days.
I will say though, I think that majority of games have switched Hidden Picks online.
Yes, it's a carryover from obviously from the XMO days, and the fact that obviously ranked. They're still ranked currently for XMO, and the Uprising one is not yet currently at time recording up and running. It's I'm sure it's pretty close, but it's not quite there. So it's obviously going to hang over from that a little bit, and I think people are used to picking hidden. So obviously, when Uprising we first got our hands on it, there was no way to do it as hidden, so people were just picking openly. And I don't know. I think it's going to come down to personal taste.
Yeah. So we got through the tournament, and we crowned a winner. Badger was our winner, and he did phenomenally. His last round was pretty amazing. I don't know if they posted the video of that yet. I don't think they have.
I'm not sure. I will say it's perhaps a slight miracle he got there, truthfully, and that's not being harsh to Badger. I think Badger might admit that himself. It was perhaps a slight miracle he got there, considering his first 2 games he played in the group stages were not very. He came 4th in both, I believe.
Well, he came 4th in our first game, so I played him in the first game, and there was a pivotal moment. I ended up 3rd in that game, unfortunately, but I should have done much better in that game, but I don't know. I was really slumping those weeks, but in any case, he had an opportunity. He could have taken Siege Tabor and got his hooks, or he could have gone for Swordmaster and gotten his Swordmaster in the next round. I think that's what his choice was. It might have been something else. Maybe he was thinking about something else. There are 2 choices, and one of them was hooks and one of them was something else. And he chose the something else, which ended up costing him the game. I think because he was ahead of me in turn order. He basically gifted me hooks, so I was playing the hook game, and unfortunately, a lot of wall combats came up. No one blew the wall, so I had a little bit of a rough time, but I did manage to get some points there. I was doing fairly well, but yeah, he got royally wrecked. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was. Oh, maybe it was. It was. You know what it was? I think it was High Council. He decided to go High Council and then pick up a card from the row, and I don't remember what card it was. I think it was maybe like, it might have been Long Live the Fighters or something else that he thought was very valuable. It might have been, I don't know. I don't know. It was like a 6-coster. I'm pretty sure it was a 6-coster, but or 7. But he picked it up and then ended up not doing very much with it. It just everything fell apart for him that game. So, but he did claw his way back to win the tournament, and he did very, very well. And then the last tournament game, which we won't really spoil, but he was sitting and he won without Swordmaster that game, which is amazing. Like, against these 3 other incredible players, Cheesable, Paul Denon, and Mr. Sneaker Dead. Just
yes, Mr. Now. I think that's TM as well.
Yes, it's trademarked. And just seeing that game play out, I saw like the end of it, because we were playing actually Big Dune during the whole tournament half, that whole thing, and people kept going over and watching the games and coming back and playing Dune and going back over there and watching Dune Imperium, then coming back. But the finals didn't. The finals started and we had finished the game, so we were all huddled around the final table, and it all looked like things were going to go very well for him, and then suddenly it looked like things were going to go very poorly for him, and then it looked like they were going to go well for him again. I'm not going to spoil it. I hope to see the final video and then we can maybe comment on it. But
I will say there's like a little bit of a meme sequence for
there
it,
was a
but
meme.
Yeah, so but yeah, we won't spoil it. One more thing I'll mention about Badger's journey in the tournament. So he as you covered, he started off very poorly. 4th in the first match, probably 3rd in the second match. And then he won every single other game. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yeah, I knew.
Yeah.
Which is,
So he went 2-0 after that in Swiss, and then winning finals, winning semifinals, and then winning the finals. Not even a second place, first place,
Yeah.
all the rest.
Which is, when you think of it, it's pretty wild. I know it's a conversation that comes around again. I know, I certainly know CJ has been a part of the conversation that came with one of the quarterfinal comments about how much is skill and how much is luck in Dune Imperium, which is not something we're going to get into in this.
No,
podcast.
not this. We'll do it for another podcast.
I think that's a subject that's probably worth covering, but it is interesting that it's now effectively the second tournament I've seen where someone lost their first 2 games and then won every single game from that, ended up winning the competition. And I am referring, of course, to Drazo, who won the previous Imperium Cup, having lost and coming 4th in both of his first 2 group games, and then won every single game he played afterwards, including knockouts. He came through the wild cards, and went on to win the competition. So, obviously, having a bit of run never hurts. There's no question about that. But not everyone's going to be able to do that. So I couldn't knock him. But I mean, he was probably surprised even being day 2, given how his competition started. But fair play to the guy. He pulled it back, made it through. I think it's also I would say that. Yeah, something else I was going to say, but that's going into the game, which I don't want to go into. But there is something else interesting about the final, which we'll get there when we get there.
All right, well let's pivot. I think this is a great time to start talking about kind of like the flow of Dune, Imperium, Uprising. And if you are one of those players who feels you maybe just don't grok it or feel really stuck how you win, like that's how I felt. I felt like that for maybe a month, honestly, since the game came out. I was up and down, doing okay, then doing poorly. And then for a while, I had not won a game in like 20 games. And that feels really bad. Like it feels really, really bad. And I know that some people out there, and especially like some of the players I played against, will be like, "Well, yeah, but you're playing against the best players in the world. Obviously, like that's going to be like that unless you've turned on your like turbo switch and just like gone and figured it out." I obviously had not done that at the time, and obviously credit to those players. They are amazing players, and I like playing with them. But like sometimes I feel completely outclassed. I took 2 weeks off from Dune Imperium Uprising after this tournament because I just needed to unplug. And I also was telling Cheesable when we were at a special event, which I believe we can probably share now. I think people have been seeing these things anyway.
Yes, I think we can talk if it's.
Yeah, I actually mentioned it.
We
Yeah.
can talk about it.
So after we went out to an IMAX and they showed us 30 minutes of Dune 2. I can't like talk about that, but other than to say like I'm really excited for it. You could like definitely hear how excited everyone else was too. But I was sitting next to Cheesable and we were chatting, and I told him, I really feel bad about how I played. I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I really just need a couple of weeks to just chill. And otherwise, I told him otherwise I'm going to burn out on it. And I was really worried about that. Honestly, I was at the point where I was like, I don't know, like if I can play this game. Like,
Yeah, it's tough. And again, and the thing is, like, especially, I don't want to jump in, but I just want to mention, like, again, a reminder, kids, like, this is some of the best players in the world, and like whatever worries you have about your own game or things you don't think are going right, like when you go to these sort of events, it is amplified so much. Like you've got to come into this like with the mindset that you can back up yourself. So I can totally appreciate this.
Yeah, and I'm not a bad player either. Like I'm not a slouch. And Lanny would say that I like 80% of my game is great, and then like my last 2 rounds have been really terrible. My round 6 and my round 7 have been terrible. And so like my whole reframing of this has come from I came back into the game. I played a couple of games this last week, did very well. I got a first and a second, but a close second, like really, really close. And I was like, okay, I think I've figured out how not to end at 5 points every other round, every other game I was playing, because I was just literally just like throwing everything at the wall, seeing what stuck, and nothing was sticking for me. So I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about how you kind of recognize what to do, what not to do. And then I'll give you a couple of anecdotes about some of the games I played and some of the things that I've started doing that have really turned it around for me. So have either of you ever like felt this way too? I know Black Shadow, you felt this way too about XMO.
Yes.
Right.
This is obviously something that I'm sure I've talked about once or twice before in some sort of passing mention. Yeah, it's tough. This is not like an easy game to be consistent at, and I think that's what a lot of it is about as well. Is a case of consistency, and that it's that constant intangible of like you play well one game and you're like, well, why can't I do this all games? Partly because it's Dune Imperium, and partly because it's if you were playing a game that's 1v1, you've got a lot more control of your own destiny. But when it's like there's anytime you go beyond the realm of 2 players, like there's always other factors that are gonna do bits and pieces. It is tough. It's a real mental battle. I can mention a few things. And I've mentioned about it as well. Like I come from more of a poker background. I played poker kind of on the side for about 2.5 years or so. This was before COVID happened. I made like a few grand from it. I did pretty. I'm happy with what I did. I met some good people, had some good times, some very late nights as well. But it's another game where like it's very difficult to be consistent because obviously there's a lot of randomness and such involved. And it's like sometimes you can feel like you feel like you're playing all right, but the results just don't seem to come. And it's really hard to ascertain why that is. Some of it is going to be random chance. Some of it is things that you can't do. Admittedly, something is going to be things that you think you're doing right, but they're not going right for whatever reason. And it is a battle of psychology. This is something that I have talked about before on this channel. That's like when things aren't going well and you kind of get stuck inside your own head, and you can be a lot of your worst enemy. It's why I think I even said to you, sometimes it is fine just to take a break. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
okay just to like take a couple of weeks and just distance yourself from it and not think about it at all. Especially when you're playing a lot and you're trying to kind of like really get to grab something, it can occupy your thoughts a lot more than you realize. And sometimes that can be fine. Some people can deal with that better than others, but not everyone can. So you know, if you're not enjoying it and if you're like getting really kind of stuck and frustrated with it, you know, taking that break can be sometimes better. It just gives your brain and mind just the chance to kind of clear and refresh itself, and you come back a couple of weeks later and it's kind of your it's a fresher experience. You're not so dogged by, I don't want to make this move because in that game the guy came over me and like he fluked an intrigue and beat me and stuff like that, and there's a lot of negative emotions that can definitely plague you, and this is something that has plagued me in the past, and obviously I've talked about. The other thing that I will also mention while I'm here, as he tries to remember exactly what the point was he was going to make, because he got carried away with the first one. Yeah, it's just again, it's like it's tough as well. I think, especially for some of us have played a lot of games, a lot of games of Dune Imperium, and it's like the circles that we play in are incredibly difficult. Playing on TTS Club is as hard a place as I can think of in the world to play this event. One of the people we had at the North Carolina event was the World Series of Board Gaming Dune Imperium Ring Champion, Mikhail, or Mikhail, I believe it was. Lovely guy. You know, really good to meet him. And I remember speaking to him after day one as we were getting ready for dinner. And I said to him, obviously, bits because I said, is this harder than World Series? He's like, oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's true. Like, it's really difficult. So, like, you know, if you're going to be playing some of these really hard games, like, you've got to be on top of it. But on the other side of it, there's obviously still a lot of people that are like learning the game, and I do sometimes I think for them it's also really brutal as well, to kind of like you see these games being played online, these competitions, you're seeing all these crazy things doing, and then like you're then trying to get to grips with it and just trying to learn the basics. Sometimes it's kind of why I one of the reasons I've got into doing like the top 5 tips series, so we target a bit more of that, you know, so people can kind of get that footing, especially I think people have been mentioned in the review coming from XIMO to Uprising. It's a much more different game than people realize. It's kind of why I said to people before Uprising, I was like, you might want to play some base Dune Imperium, because I actually reckon that's gonna get you a lot more prepared, for Uprising than playing XMO with all these
Yeah.
multiple expansions and stuff. And I do believe that is true. And I know like Cheese will mention about that, and a few other folks mention about that, like they're coming from XMO straight to Uprising, found it really hard.
Specifically, I think it's helpful for gauging the troop strength and when you can go in, because like in Ix and Imo you have a lot more ways to throw troops in, it feels like, because of the shipping track, and you constantly are getting things. In the base game you don't have that. You have to like go gather support, is that what it's called, to
Yes.
get the 4 troops, which is very similar to Uprising's. I don't
Yeah, it's
actually remember
called
what
Gather
that's.
Support and
Oh,
Uprising,
Gab
actually.
Is
Support
it
and
actually? Oh,
Sardar.
are they
Yeah.
both gather support or just like
No, you're thinking of Sardu Kari
rally
Supply.
troops? Rally troops. No, I'm thinking of rally
Rally Troops,
Yeah,
troops.
that's the one.
Rally Troops is what it's
Yeah.
called in base.
That's right. So they're very similar in a lot of ways, with a couple of notable exceptions. Sonny, do you want to talk about any of your experiences with this game, and if you've been on a low or how you got out of it?
Yeah. I mean, so as you mentioned, the differences between MO and X and Uprising is there's just a lot going on in MO and X, and a lot of ways to get to point, right? And in
Hmm.
Uprising, it gets stripped down back to almost the basics, but like a revamped version of the basics, right? So you're starting to value the one spice, the one water, a little bit more than you did in MOX, where you can make up for it with other card effects, other mechanics, a whole new track to account for points, right? And you start to value certain things on reveal, right? Like daggers a little bit more.
Yeah,
Even
true.
troops on reveal a little bit more than MOX, perhaps even more than base game, because there's certain cards that, as the meta developed, were considered not so great in base game MOX. And if you look at that card, what it had on it was just um, a troop in reveal or something like that, right? But in this game, it's a lot better to have a troop in reveal or a dagger on reveal. Sometimes makes the difference.
Well, it's
Um,
almost taking the place of in Ix and MO having those extra actions with grafted cards, or just how
yeah.
absolutely impactful each of those cards was with its agent action. And that's why there was a Swordmaster meta, right? But in this case, you don't have that because you have such powerful reveal effects like extra water, extra troops, spice, like bumps, like,
Mm.
Shishakli. Like these cards are dramatically impactful, and they let you play a little bit more close to the chest, I guess, in terms of getting a lot of Solari. You don't have to get Swordmaster all the time. I mean, it'll definitely help, and you might get outclassed in the last combat, but like for the most part, you can still do very, very well without Swordmaster. And that's one of the things I'm learning. And there's a way, and I think this is something that I haven't seen a lot of players do, but I've seen some players do it. I've seen Morphling do it. I've seen a couple other players do it. Is that you can wait and see. Like you don't have to rush.
Yeah.
The difference between 8 Solari and 6 Solari is actually pretty massive in this game. Like it's kind of easier to get to 6 Solari. You can get 5 from the shipping track. You can get 4 from just going to Spice Refinery.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
4
Solari
plus
is
a
easier to generate in some aspects. I mean, obviously that shipping track from Ix was a crazy Solari generator, but a lot of times you weren't even choosing that because once you had Swordmaster, you're like, all I need left now is spice for
right,
textiles and other things, right? So
right.
this there's a little bit more ways to use it. You feel like you're generating in different ways a little bit better, maybe. Yeah.
That's the thing, right? Just what you said, that you're
Mm.
generating them in different ways. But in Uprising, you only have like maybe a couple of chances to generate those resources. And if you don't hit those benchmarks, like if you don't hit enough to get to 8, then if you're at 6, then you have to wait, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and this dovetails into what I was going to say about like strategically what you could possibly do. What I've been doing, and I know it'd be really funny if we saw a lot of people starting to do this, but my favorite thing now to do is to slowly accumulate Solari, put my first spy on the Swordmaster
Mm.
High Council place, and just wait,
Yeah.
because like I'm gonna get it second. Like I don't care, I'll get it for cheaper. I don't have to go and try to hit those benchmarks as hard as some other people, or I can
Yeah,
like
so
skip out
you
on a
wait for someone to get it first, and then you
yeah,
could get it in the same round that they get it,
yeah.
or if not, next
Which
round.
I think it makes sense. Like there are a couple of leaders that are actually very good at getting to 8 and getting 8 very quickly. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing. Yeah, it's a totally reasonable strategy. If you can get your spy there, then you do have the affordability of, well, I don't need to get to 8. 6 is probably good enough because I can just pick it up on the same round. You're not got the obligation of like having to go to like I don't know spice refinery loads or like it's trying to get the spice refinery with spice. That's the problem because no
That
one
is
wants
the
to go there
problem.
without any spice, and obviously that's a little tricky. Some people are better at that than others, and that's just the way it goes. So,
So
but yeah,
so obviously if like someone like Staban is in the game, this might not work because he likes putting the spy up there and he has immediate access to it with his ring. So like unless something goes weird and he decides to go like Haga Basin early or something like that, then it'll work. But otherwise he's probably not going to he's probably going to get it first. But the main thing is, so what I do and what I've been seeing as successful is just letting people think that I'm going to go there early. But I think if you get your spy on that space, you don't even bother. People will keep fighting and they'll keep trying to get Solari. But I was in a game where no one wanted to go there. Like they just refused to get 8 Solari. And so I just waited. I waited until round 6, my last action, to get it. And then suddenly every other player at the table is sitting on 2 actions going into round 7, and I'm the only one with 3. It was like,
Yeah.
what the hell happened here?
I
Like
think I actually had one of those in one of the North Carolina games I played. I think
it's a great strategy. It's really good.
No money helping any of the conflicts, and like everyone that was getting spice was sending it to factions, and no one was really getting money. I think the Gurney player went the entire game without finding a single coin or something ridiculous.
That's crazy.
It was a really, really strange game. And yeah, I think it was round 6. I ended up just I think it was I could have got my Swordmaster round 5, and someone was expecting me to go for my Swordmaster round 5 so they could again go Spice Refinery and whatever round 6. What I ended up doing, because I had my spy on that spot as well, is I deliberately didn't go Swordmaster round 5 to get it round 6 so that no one else could get it. So that I was the only person going into the third round with 3 actions. It's such an absurd situation. And if you think to like Inix, this would never happen. Never in a million years would you get to round 7 and only one person's got their Swordmaster. Completely inconceivable.
Yeah.
But Uprising, like, kind of weird stuff comes like this, and that's the nature of it. As I've mentioned before, when we talked about it in the review, like Dune Uprising is effectively an alternate universe Dune Imperium with the Worms expansion, and that's how you have to treat it. You can't treat it in the same fashion as Ixima with, all the rewards from shipping and the Talaxia research. They don't exist. You have to kind of reprogram yourself to remember that all these ways of just getting stuff on every single thing you do don't exist. You've kind of got to manufacture it yourself, and sometimes
the resource diversity is very different. And resource generation different as well. I think, I don't know if either of you mentioned this yet, but troop trading, emptying other players' garrisons by putting in extra troops from your own is a big thing in Uprising.
It is.
Because, if you exhaust them, their resources, they don't have as many options to regenerate those troops as quickly as they did in all the expansions.
I think I've mentioned that for a couple of my leaders in the series that's going up currently. I believe, like Gurney, for example, is an obvious example, but there are other people that can also do it as well, and it's a totally legitimate strategy. Obviously, you're dependent on what rewards do come up, and obviously, you're also dependent a bit on who you're playing, because some people will be a lot more mindful of this than other people. But regardless, it's totally doable. I feel like we've gone completely on a huge tangent from what we've actually talking about.
No, but this is important, because I would say that one of the things that I learned and turned around a lot of my game, and what I've started doing, or at least the new way I've thought about the game. I have two things I want to say about this. The first is being like not limping into combat, but forcing people to go over the top of you to push themselves out of the next combat.
Set a price.
That's very important.
I talk about in like the commentaries. Like sometimes you just got to set a price, and if they decide to go over the top of that, then fine. That's okay.
Right.
But sometimes, you just gotta
set a price. That's right. Yeah. So like in the first combat, and I think the first combat is one of the most important in a lot of ways for the game, even though it might not be ultimately, but I think it sets the tone for the rest of the game. Because if suddenly someone goes in for 3 troops, or even 4 if they're Gurney or whatever, or they hit like, deliver supplies and then and research station or whatever they want to do, they're out for a round or 2. Like they're not combating at all. So if you manage to push like 1 troop in, first of all, the next player very likely will have to put 2 or 3 in to guarantee that first place. 2
Especially
or 3 troops round 1.
Fighting going on, yeah.
Right. And even if you got like say the one of the Fremen spots, or even took the combat spot, it doesn't really matter. Just putting 1 in gives you a whole lot more power than if you threw 3 in. So, and this is something that Cheesable was talking about. And after the tournament, was it after the tournament or after one of the days, we stayed up super late. I think we were up to like 3 or 4 in the morning, and he was recording for his channel. and he played a game of Staban where he ended up winning round 6, and we were playing as DS. No, it was not DS. It was Dino. It was me, and I think it was Che, and we were just like watching him play, and he had like this insane like thing going on. He was just talking about it as though we're like listening to him talk about it, and then he's like, "Oh, and we went 10 points. We win." We're like, "What the hell?" Like we were we were in disbelief how he was talking about what he was doing and doing it.
Huh.
And we're like, yeah, it's working. Like, what the fuck? We're just falling for it. He's telling us what he's doing. It was amazing. It was really fun. We were super, super, super tired, of course, but like he also had Morphling like backseating, so they were both playing.
Yeah, they were doing.
Yeah, they were
I
doing.
I recall seeing this. I think
it was fun, but that his main point was spare like your troops. You don't get them that much, and you have to go out of your way to get them if you decide to commit. And so keeping your like, and this is something in Ix, it's much easier getting your troops back. You ship, it's fairly simple. Like, but this way in this game, it is not simple. Like you have to go out of your way and take a green action, take a lands red action to get troops back. You have to go out of your way. Sometimes you have to go out of your way and go to Highliner out of turn. You have to go there just to get troops back, which is usually a bad idea. Not always, but usually a bad idea. These are these ways of getting troops. You can't even go to Fremen to get your troops back. You just get one troop.
Yeah.
So you only have like two options, 3 options.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Sardaukar, but you have 3 options. And they all cost something. Either it's time or it's time and spice. So like that initial
or
combat
water with research station, right? But you
right,
want
or research
that water for either blocking worm players or being a worm player yourself.
People are not going to go to research station and garrison the troops. It's done as one big shock move. That's just the way it is. At least even with people like Sardaukar, or even like High Council, it's all garrisoning. And very occasionally you'll see like a Highliner and someone maybe puts in like 1 or 2 troops because they're obviously like it's around 6 and they're actually trying to garrison up for later on, stuff like that. But you don't see it at the research station because that 2 water is so expensive.
right.
Yeah, and because all those spaces are so expensive, I mean, even a space like Erkeen, that's a free extra troop that allows you to put in 3 by default, right? It seems stronger than it did in the previous game.
The other thing is you should probably default in general to spending less than spending more. Like you might get more, but spending more is going to end up bankrupting you. And that's a big deal in this game. Like it's really hard to get spice. Sometimes you have to take 2 spice from like Haga Basin because you really need that Highliner. But like find another way. Like you might be able to pick up a card that reveals for spice, or a card, or a card that adds spice. Like I really like Thumper in this game. Like I think Thumper is a great card. Like really is. Like you get that card, like it will power you into round 6 and 7 because it just gets you that extra spice. Usually it's just 1 extra spice, but sometimes it's like 2 or 4, it's kind of, or it's crazy. 3,
and even
maybe.
Just the reveal, like it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, it's an extra spice for reveal. It's great.
Yeah, that's what I was mentioning, right? The on-play or on-real effects that seemed not that great in the previous version are much better in this. Because Thumper was there in MOX, but it was
it was released late. Yeah, it did come in as a.
It was like a teaser. It was like a halfway between XMO and Uprising teaser, and then they, I think then they gave them out at the tournament. And I guess they also released them with Uprising as promos. So
yes,
I don't know. It's confusing.
It is a bit much, but the problem is obviously Thumper. Like I said at the time when we first started, I was like, people don't realize that Thumper's not a bad card because it lives in an XMO world where there's like 40 other really strong cards.
Yes.
And it just gets drowned out. But if you had Thumper in base game Dune Imperium, it'd be like a top. It'd be up there, like as a very sometimes a bit niche, but in the right hands and used at the right time, very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think it could be good in base.
Yeah, but in any event, we'll going back to
getting back to this idea that you can get in this slump and then trying to figure a way out of it. So, the way I kind of approached it was I needed to meditate on all of these different things that Cheesable had been talking about. Badger had been trying to help me, like he like guided me through a couple games. Lanny's been trying to help me, and I've been having a lot of trouble, largely because my play style differs from all of them in a lot of different ways. I think it's closest to Cheesable's play style, but
I'd say so.
it doesn't reflect Badger's at all. Like, he plays completely different than I do, and Lanny plays completely different than anyone else in the world. So like, I can't play like those characters. Like, they're very good players, but they play differently, and I can't be like them. And so I think what I was trying to do is I was trying to figure out what makes their gameplay work when I should have been trying to figure out what makes my gameplay work. Does that make sense? And so
Yes,
I
yes.
wasn't really like figuring myself out. I wasn't really figuring my play. I was trying to like do something else, trying to be somebody else, which I think was a mistake. And ultimately hurt my gameplay and hurt my patterns of play.
Everyone has their preferences. Like I took, like usually a very faction heavy sort of player. That's just the way I learned it, the way I picked it up. I think if you're always pressuring those, you're always causing problems to people. But some people don't. Some people play very kind of like, again, you bring Joe's an example. Obviously, he plays Helena a ton because he plays very much off cities
Yeah.
and off the council and that sort of thing. That's just the strategy that he's developed, and that's what he does over time. So obviously, like for like me, like trying to get advice from him and vice versa might not be that useful because we play in very different fashions, and that's part of it. You have to kind of, I think there are overall there's going to be general principles that I think apply for a lot of people a lot of the time in a lot of spots. Obviously, if you're trying to go a bit more specialized, a bit more in depth, then you have to kind of go out beyond that reach. That's one of the reasons that I like playing Zero Alarm, because she's a little bit unusual. She's a little tricky occasionally, but like I think she's a very unpredictable leader to play against. You don't always really know what Irulan's exactly going to do, and I like that
Mm-hmm.
side of her. I like the fact that that's one of the reasons I kind of like playing as Paul Atreides in the base game, because of the extra card draw and knowing what you go into. You've got these really cool combos of moves, and Irulan's kind of similar. She's great at just like finding surprise spice out of nowhere, and then suddenly she's highlighting into a conflict that you didn't think she was even interested in. Oh, I've got a battle intrigue as well, and you just come out of nowhere, stuff like that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's, and that's
Yeah,
super
she very
super
much
interesting.
doesn't default to a certain play style. It can
Yeah,
be
you can
um,
manipulate
player that
around.
way, right?
You
Yeah.
can do unusual things, and it's never dull. And when it goes well, it's great. Doesn't always. Sometimes she is a little bit subject to bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, it's part of the overall the general principle that, yeah, there's always a ton to learn. And I think everyone goes through phases where you just aren't getting results too much. But I think what I to learn over the course of time, partially because I got older, I think as well, is that, like, for me, and it comes out from my playing with Paul, like I'm at a stage where I'm not overly. It's just difficult for some people. If you can get to a point where like you're not overly worried about the results, like that can help take a lot of the pressure off. Especially like if you put yourself in a position where you feel like you should be winning games and like you should be getting bits and pieces. Like for me, the way I look at it is I'm more worried about, did I play well? Did
Mm-hmm.
what I do make a lot of sense? Do I feel like I look back at a game? Is there anything that I would have done differently? And if the answer's no, and it's honestly no, then like I can feel happy that I played to about as well as I could have done. And if I win or don't win the game, like it's kind of a shrug. Like if you play the best game in the world, and then suddenly like someone just flukes an intrigue at you and you lose, doesn't mean what you did was wrong by any stretch of imagination or anything like that. You just that's the way it goes
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I talk about this on stream. I talk about it when I'm playing Uprising. That like one of the later Uprising ones that I did actually on the stream. Like we had I played, I think it was like 2 or maybe 3 games and such. Didn't win any of them. But I played pretty good for like 2.5 games, and I was like, like I, it matters to me more, and I think that's a mindset you could perhaps try and get into
Right.
if you're not getting the results. I think if you feel you played well, and you played well, the results will eventually come behind that. Um, you can play well and not win games, and you can win games when you didn't play well. they're both very different. Sometimes you can have like a kind of a really sort of nothing game, but you just kind of fluke into some intrigues. You pull a card at the right time. Someone else like misplays, doesn't put troops into a combat, or like they just don't draw the right thing, and you just kind of get there. And like for me, I think if you can try and like somehow get to the point where you're more, if you feel you've played decently, and just rely on that, and the results will come behind you. That's kind of the mentality I try to go for.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that changing that mindset is difficult, especially when, you know, if you're content creators and you're trying to make this, you're trying to make more Dune content, but you don't feel confident enough that you can put out a leader, you know, guide. Like I don't feel yet confident enough to do that, but I mean, I really like that you've put out those guides. I think they're very helpful. Actually, just watched the most recent one. Go watch it if you have not already.
Yeah. Top five
Yeah,
tips. If it
it's
goes well,
Fade, I
we'll
think,
do
went out.
more. I've just uploaded the third one for Gurney at time of recording. Probably by the time this goes up, the majority of at least the first part of the series has gone well. And if they go well and they're well received,
Yeah.
you know, we can do more topics. I will say just very quickly, it's really hard to like get these down to like 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
It's really tough. Several of the videos, like I actually end up just cutting things out that I wanted to talk about, but I want to make them kind of sort of more bite-sized. And I think it's kind of good to like revisit stuff at a more slightly baser level. Like if you've played like hundreds of games of Dune Imperium and hundreds of games of Dune Uprising, there's nothing in these that's particularly revelatory. But I think it's just instilling general sort of ideas and concepts and general things of what people want to be doing. Because I think as well, there's still a lot of people that are learning Uprising and still kind of getting to grips with it, and especially there's quite a few people that are coming from that Xima background. There's still people that are playing the rank system, and eventually will come with Uprising, and will like learn like the rest of us that it's a totally different world. So you know,
Yeah.
hopefully a series like that can be a nice kind of a branching point into, you know, and people can develop their own kind of general specific ideas from that. Then great. I'm not there to like tell people how they should play, you know, Margot Fenring for 7 rounds. But maybe I'm saying, well, for the first couple of rounds, you should probably look to try and do this, this, and this, and think about this later on, and you know, and experiment a bit from there. And I think that's so far from the feedback I've gotten has been really strong. So I'm really glad for that.
The last thing I wanted to mention about coming out of this funk I was in had to do with understanding one key aspect of Dune Uprising that I just didn't understand. And that was, how do the wall combats work? And how do, basically, how am I supposed to be approaching them? It's very difficult, I think, when you get into this game and you just see, okay, when the wall's blown, I get double points. That's great. But if you're not the player who's doing that, how do you respond? What are you supposed to be doing, right? Are you supposed to be like rushing to get hooks? Are you supposed to be doing something else? So for me, I split Dune Uprising into 2 different games. They play completely differently depending on actions in the game. Does the wall get broken by round 3? If it gets broken by round 3, we're going to have a different game than if it stays up till round 7. If it gets broken round 7, that's fine, but we'll have a different amount of time, a different pace to the game, and people will not be running away with a bunch of points if the wall's up. You can kind of like measure when to go into combat a little bit easier. At least this is what I've started to figure out. And I'm not obviously an expert on that, but I think that this is what I've kind of figured out. If the wall's up, you can play a more kind of standard, like almost base game Dune kind of game. You still have to go into combats and pick your battles, but you're worried about people getting maybe 1 point, maybe 2 points if they have a match, versus 3 to 5 points, right? And that's a massive difference. It's a massive difference. So like, the wall goes up or goes down, round 3 probably should start veering towards hooks, and everyone should probably veer towards hooks. You also need to be aware that if somebody's going in with worms, it might be in your best interest to go over the top with a highliner and stop them from getting points. Like, it really might. So it's an interesting dilemma, especially if that combat is a match for you. especially if it's a match for you. If it's a match for you, 100% you go over the top. You keep them from getting their stuff. They might get bonuses or whatever, but really the problem is that they're going to spiral out of control with points. So I just think of Dune Uprising with these two kinds of different games that you can play. A kind of slower, methodical game if the wall's up, and a kind of frenetic, more variable, potentially early win game when the wall's down. So right now, I think we're in a, like, I know Cheesable has been saying that we're in a wall destruction meta where people are blowing the walls early, but it really depends on the group. Like, I've been playing a lot of people who don't do that. They just really don't. They refuse to blow the wall. And I think that for me is where the game feels the most tense and most interesting. One of the reasons, remember in our review, we talked about how there are some cards that, maybe too many cards that blow the wall. Well, I think that is why there's so much variability in how this plays and how Uprising can feel, is because there's so many ways to do it. But if those people are holding those holding those or tossing them or getting rid of them or using them for different effects, then you're better off in a close fight with all these other players than if you're going to try to pull ahead. Because you're really risking a lot blowing the wall. You really are. Unless you're in position, you 100% know that next round I will have you first to worms. No one can stop me. Like, in that case, that makes perfect sense. But if you're not, and people are threatening like Highliner, they have like sitting on a lot of water, they have a spy on the deep desert or whatever, like that could be a signal to not blow the wall. So it's interesting, and I think that's actually helped me a lot, just recognizing those sorts of things as I play. So
yeah, I would agree. Not to make this too much of a strategy talk, but I think that's the one thing that I think people learn as they play Uprising more, is that sometimes, like, going in for a conflict that maybe isn't the best benefit for you can be fine if someone that it would incredibly well benefit doesn't win it.
yes,
If you're stopping like let's say like it's a round 3, for example, let's say against a Muad'Dib who's got worms, and it's protect the Seachers, and it's his matching conflict. Like, if he wins that conflict, he's like halfway to winning the game. So deciding to commit to like a big conflict, like, even maybe sometimes going in for like a Highlander or something like that, if you feel you've got to do it, like, he cannot be allowed to win that conflict, because if he does, it's from an alliance, it's infinite water, it's more worms, it's points, and it's just like you rock and roll from there. Like, not all leaders are great at being able to come back from that. This is where like Gurney, for example, can be really good, because he's someone that can get away with doing that once, like going really heavily in for a fight that might not be a huge benefit for him. But if it's stopping someone from just completely running from the game, sometimes, and if you're the person that's positioned to do it, it's not like you're getting nothing out of it. And it's kind of like how, even if you make the decision, it's then how do you kind of fold that into your strategy. Some guys might remember listening to this, I did a game on stream, which I then recovered on a review way back when I was playing as Paul Atreides against like a Baron Harkonnen player, and I went crazy all in on like the Fremen Alliance, like almost out of nowhere, because I realized, well, if he gets this alliance, he just wins the game. But it's not so much about doing it. It's about, okay, if I am going to do this, how do I work this into what I'm doing overall? How do I make use of this? And like, and stuff like that. So I think it's part of the thing that you have to recognize going in. And it's something again, coming from a poker background, like, I make a point of trying to think more about not just what I'm doing in the game, but you have to be mindful of what other people are trying to achieve as well, and what their tendencies might be. Again, like, I haven't played like a ton of other board games, that sort of thing, but I do find that, having played a couple of years of like poker and competitions, cash games, that sort of thing, like, there are transferable skills, and I like to think that helps you from time to time.
Yeah. Sonny, you've been pretty quiet. I want to get you in on this.
Yeah. Any specific question on?
Just like,
Um,
if have you found that there's a particular, like, I know I kind of like turned this into a strategy podcast. I apologize for that, everybody. In case you wanted a strategy, here it is. But are there things you found helpful, like that you always keep in mind when you go into a game that might be like useful, like last minute like tips for our listeners if they feel like they like I did a little while ago, kind of like lost in Uprising, not really sure where to go. I was just mentioning like watching your troops. That's really important.
Yeah, yes,
Watching
we
the
discussed
walls.
watching troops making people overextend to win certain combats, right, or spend more by setting a benchmark.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we haven't discussed is the strength of intrigues in this game versus MOX is just the baseline of the strength of an intrigue is higher than MOX. And MOX, they felt a little bit more diluted, or I don't want to say situational, but yeah, definitely diluted, right? There's certain intrigues in that version that were straight up stronger. I think the variability of them was higher, right? There were multiple intrigues worth 2 points, um, perhaps even um, 3 points, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
intrinsically, if you think about playing towards like plans within plans, for example, is you're getting 2 points off of the intrigue, but then you're also just building towards an extra point that maybe you wouldn't have before, right? But in this game, there are a lot of intrigues that are above average. There are less intrigues that are straight up 2 points. Um, so I I would recommend taking an approach that is more cyclical towards intrigues
Okay.
for a lot of different reasons, right? So secrets wasn't considered super strong in the previous version, and that board space hasn't changed, but it feels like it is better in the context of not only certain leaders but overall, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, and then a spot like Imperial Privilege and even Assembly Hall seems stronger than those kind of similar intrigue grabbing card effects, leader effects in the previous version.
Yeah. So don't forget to get your secrets, get your intrigues. Very important in this game. Like
Yeah.
going into a combat without any intrigues is a massive mistake. Most of the time, people can calculate exactly what your combat strength can be.
Yep.
And if that means that, you've tossed in 5 troops, you're at 10 strength, and they're like, what? You have like maximum 2 daggers. All right. They can figure it out. And that's one of the things I also have that again had problems with, just like I was trying to go in, I wasn't paying attention to my intrigues. I wasn't paying attention to that. So like knowing, just having that kind of uncertainty can, and since if people know, and now players do, that risking a lot for a combat and losing second place because somebody was holding like 3 daggers in their hand from an intrigue, that's a huge commitment. It's a huge, huge, huge commitment. It's not worth it. They really want a sure thing, I think. Most
Yeah.
players nowadays are going for a sure combat.
So there was a particular strategy in MOX base game cloud called Clown Baron, right? Where the Baron player would just accumulate uh, as much intrigues as they could,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean their ring effect accumulates intrigues, and they would just keep hitting secrets and draw intrigues. And much of the mid game, they would have 5 or 6 intrigues, and they wouldn't be worried if someone goes secrets and steals because they just have so many. Um, and a lot of them were very situational, right? They're hit or miss. I don't feel the same way in this version. I feel like if you're holding 3 or 4 intrigues, not even more than that, you feel super dangerous.
Yeah.
Whereas in base game, that Clown Baron holding 6 intrigues, I was like, yeah, half of them are dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right. That's a big difference. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. If you're holding like even like 2, let's say you got 3 combat cards or 2 combat cards in hand and 1 other card, even that other card's going to probably be high impact. Like it could be a spy card, It could be just extra troops. It could be, mercenaries, really, like really dangerous cards. It could be points. Like everything seems pretty strong. There are only a couple cards that are maybe like weaker than general, but like it's not a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the worst intrigue that in this game is Call to Arms, right? That one that when you buy a card and reveal, you get
But
a
even
troop.
that's not the worst. Like,
Yeah, and it's
that could
not the
be a
worst.
really useful setup, like sort of like a round 3 or round 4, and you buy a couple of prepared ways anyways. And if garrisons are empty for people, like that can set you up pretty well. Shaddam's favor is kind of similar. Like on paper, it looks
Yeah.
Yeah,
like not very
Shaddam's Favor
much.
is another one. Yeah, but it's a
But
little. Yeah,
like that intrigue has won me confidence before.
I actually like
Because
that
everyone
intrigue. Yeah.
it's better than it looks, and it takes people by surprise and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess a late manipulate, which is that one that reduces the Imperium row cost, but I mean even that is great early. So
Right. All right.
but
Well, I think that's gonna do it. I think we're already past 2 hours. This has been a long podcast.
my
We'll
bed
have
is looking very good right now.
yeah,
Honestly.
it's bedtime for you. We are going to be back with rotation 11 hopefully sooner, and hopefully we'll do some more strategy talk and get Sunny back on here because yeah, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
GDFN.